Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company, along with Captain of the Neverland Pirates, Jake Del Maro, and today we're talking about That one was for the kids. Today we're talking about DDAL 315, Szith Morcane Unbound, writer Robert Adducci, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulesh, and Travis Woodall. This is a 4-hour mod for Tier 2 play, tuned for 5 8th level characters. The party must collect their allies, scout ahead, and take back Szith Morcane. Part 1, The Underdark. The party navigates random encounters as they meet up with allies that may help them take back Szith Morcane. That's all of the first section. And I am here to say, random encounters suck. They're dumb. They suck in every place they show up. They're filler encounters, and I don't like them. Go ahead.
Do you have... Oh, no. I'm letting you run with this. Brian, if there were a couple... Because we all agree that we're not choosing random encounters. That's just not how that works here.
Right.
Like, I will never choose a random encounter. If you were to choose, what we got to do... Like, a few of them. So, we need to label a few that we would want to do. Which ones would you say are the most important to grab?
I would do...
Let's see if our things match up.
I would do the terrain hazard, so you have an exploration component.
Yep.
I wouldn't do the hidden, because it's not described. It's just given as a random encounter. There's no section in the first section about the hidden.
Yep.
So I would definitely skip that.
Yeah, I would too.
I would do a warden patrol if you were looking for combat to start off early. And then I would either do escape slaves or a rendezvous with old allies to push like a social component.
So I kind of fall in line. I would immediately skip the I would do the rendezvous 100%. I think I would and then I would follow up with doing the Galeb Dur and the Renegade.
Okay.
Because there's optional components in there. I mean, Mike and I don't even know if you need to put that as a random encounter if you wanted to double down on something else. Like, you could be like, hey, we're going to reach out to them anyway. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if that's, like, necessary.
And honestly, like, if your party has, like, secured those allies, they should be thinking about those allies.
Yeah, like,
right?
We literally just spent the last 4 hours in terms of D&D play, you know, doing a Mayan player mission, which we got their support, and a Myconid mission, which I'm hoping it wasn't too far along, like it wasn't 3 years ago, and it wasn't like, we helped you that one time, come help us. It's like, it was fresh in their minds, you know, a week ago, you know? So, like, I like the Galeb Dur one because it shows a really interesting component of the madness that occurs, because the Galeb Durs are just silly Wisconsin people, I think.
Okay.
That are too friendly.
That feels like a personal attack, but all right.
But like not in a bad way, but like, you know, they're like they're good people typically.
Yeah.
Good elementals. And it allows you to go meet the stone giants, which I think having a stone giants group potentially helping. That does
bring in another potential ally for the big fight. Like, I think that's probably true.
And then you could go with the renegade, which is Drow Alkalite of Kieran Sali. You find Asala. What was it? I think she can bring you to the coalition of Revenancers.
Yes.
So like that's another Drow potential helping point.
Yeah, that's true.
So and you know what? You can always do a combat if you want, but be also aware that there is a pretty meaty combat like in this mod.
Yeah, I guess like I would say that I would pick the encounters here that are going to help your party with the things they are weakest on, right? Like if they're not good at strategizing, I might do like the slavers, because the slaves have knowledge on like specific information on the best ways to assault the city. And that will like potentially entice your players to take time to plan that strategy better. If you know that they're just gonna like go balls to the wall,
they're gonna die, but
if you know that they're just gonna go in hard and fight stuff without planning, like I would give them as many allies as possible, probably.
Also, don't be afraid of moving information around.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the issue with the terrain is there's no like secondary thing you gain from it. I just would be disappointed there's not a lot of other exploration stuff in this module, and so for people who like rolling skill checks, there's not a lot of opportunity. I might include 2 or 3 of those terrain. I might use those terrain encounters as like transitory between the other encounters. I think that's probably because they're like one roll and they're over, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty good like way to get.
Or there's
from
a mini
one
like
to
situation,
another. Yeah.
like, oh, you failed this check,
but that's
you're falling,
right? But that's a good way to get from the imperfect Galabdor to the renegade or something like that. So that's probably how I would use those environmental hazards. I wouldn't throw too many at your players because they'll be like, all right, like what's the next river thing, right? Like,
why are there so many rivers?
Right, that could get kind of tedious, but I don't know.
No, I mean, I liked it, and I think that's it. And then anything that they do then has an immediate effect into the second part.
Yeah, and it's not like this mysterious potential future effect. Like, it is a direct effect immediately in the next section, which is great.
Yeah.
Anyway, part 2, Scouting Szith Morcane. Allies gained. The party scouts out the city to develop the best strategy to take it back. There are a lot of sections here for the party to get through.
Maybe.
Potentially, yeah.
It's like, there's skippable parts here. Like, very similar to when we were last here. Like, there's a lot of just extra garbage that's not necessary. I found this part as a DM. Hold on. We should actually make a disclaimer at the very beginning of these videos, which is just snippets of me saying, run this, or whatever, if you're a new DM. But, like, realistically, don't run this if you're a new DM. Just stop.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
Like, watch our video. Enjoy our video. Like the video. Subscribe to our channel.
Give us that
close
thumbs up.
this video.
And then close the video and pull something up.
Pull up 312 or 313 or 311 or whatever the hell we just ran.
Right. 309 and 313, I think.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Go run those instead, and then come back to this one.
They're just better for first-time DMs. Like, they're just frankly better. Easier to run, more streamlined.
Doesn't mean it's a bad mod. It's
a great mod. There's just a lot of stuff you have to keep straight. And it's just not what I would introduce myself to this role with.
This is punishment.
I think that's fair.
Like, there's parts, even like the whole like portion, like how I ran it was we had the same party. They've been here once. We saved an archmage, and I was like, this is the same layout.
Yeah.
The one thing missing is there's no big spider anymore.
Right.
And
instead there's new terrible things.
Now there's a Bahir just floating around, which is horrifying.
Yeah.
So I would say, this part you can kind of glaze over. I would almost skip this part. I would, just for the fact, like, maybe keep, like, if there is something that's important to note here, sure. But use this info when you come back. Like,
yeah, and I guess you can, like, all of this scouting information could come out of the prior section.
Like, because the Coalition of Darkness is more important. I don't know why the Coalition of Darkness did not go, I mean, depending on what you chose. So if my party chose, if I chose the Galeb Dur and the Renegade, or, meeting with old allies, I would skip immediately to go and deal with, in the cases that I had, was the Lodge of Faces and the Revenancers.
Yeah.
Go deal with those and come back here, because you have 2 direct sources. You have the Galeb Dur that says, I will lead you to the Lodge of Faces, which is not inside Szith Morcane.
And I think it's easy to break that up, right? Like, if in section 1 you do the Galeb Dur, immediately after doing the Galeb Dur, go to the Lodge of Faces, and then come back to section 1.
And that's how I ran it.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to run it. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense, right? It's like, I'll show you these stone giants in a while when you're scouting the city that they're not in.
Like, I think that to me was one of the most frustrating things, because since we're playing online still, it's like, you hear scrolling through pages.
Yeah.
Because, realistically, that Lodge of Faces should either be a section right there, or I feel like this is a little out of order. And this is surprising considering Robert Alducci writes very straightforward mods.
Generally, yeah.
Like, 2 mods ago, it was just like, perfect. Now it's like, it's not messy. It's just, I guess I wouldn't go, like, just because I want my character players, because overarching theme here, less work on your behalf. If you give your players more allies, it helps in the final fight of season 3, because like, who do we have as friendlies? Myconids, Mind Flayers, Stone Giants.
Sure.
So it can take parts away and also make it feel less of a lost cause at times. And I think that's like a more rewarding thing, because it also notes your player's progression through the campaign. Like, it doesn't expressly say in Assault on Mir Mydra, hey, the Stone Giants of blank blank blank. But if my player says, hey, we helped some Stone Giants, hey, we did this and this, and I'm like, kudos to you, inspiration for remembering that too.
Yeah, and that's something that we've been kind of stressing for 2 seasons now, is focus on the rewards that aren't material, right? Like, focus on reputation with factions that don't exist anymore, or groups of people that like don't have necessarily a mechanical benefit. It takes the future work off you, because you can be like, oh, this whole section of enemies is being dealt with by X, so
or
we
like
can
maybe
just push through.
Reduces the difficulty level.
Which
I'm sorry, admins that are out there watching this, but like, there are times in these mods that you just get plowed. And like, it's sometimes nice, because then I, in my final fight, don't need to weaken my boss, because I've been smashing my entire party with fire giants for the last 3 hours. Like, when a critical roll hits and it does 50 damage.
It's tough.
It's like,
and
I'm full level.
That's not like a wild dice crit. Like, that's average damage.
That's a pretty average crit. Like, it would be, it's almost like, wow, that was a weak hit from a giant if it's anything less than 30 damage. Like, so I do feel that you can take the liberties here as a DM to make note and make your campaign more holistic if you're running it in total, like, like in its series progression, how it's supposed to be run. I think this is not a bad mod to further assist, because you can gain quite a few allies, and learn a lot about like Szith Morcane, because I mean, as a DM, I really didn't like. I'm not edition heavy. I've only been playing for 5 years. I mean, that sounds kind of, but I've been playing for 5 years. But I have Brian. I've got Big Mar. I've got a couple other guys who like been playing for longer than I've been alive. Like,
and the difference for me is, like, I've been playing for 20 years, but I have not been playing like Forgotten Realms, right? So like, I don't know. I didn't know anything about Szith Morcane before these mods.
And then I've got Big Mar, who's just like saying, "Oh, I've
an
got
encyclopedia of
it's
Faerun,
an ridiculous knowledge base of what he has." And I was like, "Oh, it sounds like," when I was reading through this mod, I was like, wondering how long has actually Szith Morcane been under the Fire Giants like hold? I was like, "Oh, this is like, maybe in the last few months," and it's like, they've been held for years. I'm like, why are we now dealing with this? Like, why are they like, you know what?
Why is a group of level 5 adventurers that Alana Lacidel may or may not actually know the ones responsible for taking back Szith Morcane?
This is like, this is an afterthought for tier 4 party. Like, someone could walk through like, knock it off, kill, and they're like, no, we're gonna try extra hard to make this difficult. See, level 5 adventurers, go.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like, and like we said, this is not the mod you run if you haven't run mods before. Like, the benefit of season 3 is you get all of the season 3 mods for like $20, right? Like, all of the early seasons have that like bundle pack where like it's $20 for all of the mods in the season.
It's amazing.
And that's why we've started with these like older modules in terms of these videos instead of starting with current content, because it's hopefully a way to get new DMs into DMing.
Yeah.
Because it's an affordable way to get a lot of content for them to run, right?
Yep.
But if you're going to do that, this is 3-15. There are 13 other mods that you should have run by now, and you should run those first. Like,
yeah. Like, even if you're a new DM for Season 3,
yeah,
by this time, I think you kind of get the shtick of what Season 3 is. I mean, sure, there's a significant shift in writing styles and also the environments that's happening.
Which is one of the biggest drawbacks of Adventures League is, like, all of the modules are written by different writers, so there's not a centralized... They try, but there's just not a centralized tone. No. So it's tough to, like, kind of shift from one mod to another sometimes.
But in terms of authors, Robert Alducci's going to give it to you straight, and he's giving you 42 pages of giving it to you straight.
That's why 3 years from now, when we finish catching up, I'm excited to run Eberron, where Sean Merwin wrote everything, and everything is the same tone.
No, we're not allowed doing that.
No? All right. That's fine.
No, you know why? Because that's too easy.
I see. People don't need advice on how to run consistent modules that are all as good as the last one.
Nope.
If you do need help with the tone, Out of the Abyss is like the inspiration for this whole season. So if you can find a cheap version of that book at Half Price Books or whatever, like, pick it up. You can pick it up for $20 sometimes, $12, whatever.
I guess we should get back to actually doing
anyway,
it.
Back to the module.
We didn't get to part 3. Part 2
Well,
still.
you got to part 3 when you talked about the stone giants.
Then I'll read part 3 for you. The Coalition of Darkness. The party gains a last opportunity to gain allies in the coming battle. By infiltrating the city, they can gain the aid of powerful beings and undermine the city's defenses. Brian, lead us off.
All the stuff that Jake said about stone giants and drow resistance. There's also a bronze dragon that you can free from a amulet, which is super cool. I think it's a really cool like little interlude. You should do that. You should definitely have your players do that because it's super fun. To deal with
the Bahir.
Yeah, also to deal with the Bahir, but it's super fun. Like, it's a fun thing to do. And it's this kind of like ominous but like hopeful thing where there's a pissed off bronze dragon ready to kill giants. So.
Well, the other side of it, this is once again where I think they should flip these parts.
Yeah.
Because then everything that's required out of these situations is to go into the city. Mm-hmm. Why would you go into the city and then go like,
all right, let's go back
out. Let's go back. Yeah. We scouted it. We got into the buildings. We got to go back now.
We got into the buildings enough that we freed substantial allies. Let's go home. But we gotta go back. And we'll come back. Yeah.
We'll go talk to the other things. But I do like. I'm gonna highlight once again the Caleb Durr. I love the Lodge of Faces. Mm-hmm. I think it is such an interesting, just like elementals working with stone giants. This Caleb Durr is considered imperfect from almost overtouching stone giants, and stone giants are like. They appreciate all kinds of beauty. Mm-hmm. And, they're it should be immediate, I don't know. I will never not put that in there. I'll always put this section in here.
But you should have put it in 2 sections ago.
Put it in 2 sections ago, yeah. So, run correctly. Yeah. And it's just so interesting seeing all this. And, there's so much good info about giants, because, we're really not supposed to be talking about giants during this season. I mean, we kind of are, but not really. Mm-hmm. But you're mostly dealing with fire giants, not stone giants. So having to see how this has bled into the other cultures is very interesting. Considering the ordning's happening mid this as well. Isn't everything happening at the same time? Because we had 2 seasons of Out of the Abyss.
Season 5 takes place
post Tyranny of Dragons.
Yes and no. In AL mindset, yes. In the books, no. Right? In the books, it's all simultaneous.
Well, I thought it was when the ordning really kicked into swing after Tiamat died.
Maybe, but if you go through the content, right?
real close.
So one of the suggestions on how to get to the beginning of Storm King's Thunder, like the level 5 section, is to run Horde of the Dragon Queen, right? So they're pretty simultaneous.
Okay.
But like that's not the direction that AL leans. Like AL says that like all of these are
frame, but it's all happening in 1489 DR or whatever the heck it's called. But they're all happening pretty simultaneously, like within a decade. Like that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Or it's even actually within like 3 years. But
yeah.
like we had 2 books. We had Out of the Abyss and Rage of Demons that happened, which were really not. I mean, I guess you could say even Elemental Prince, the Elemental Evil, like they all kind of ignored the giants and everything, but then you kind of like run full steam back into the giants. So like, it's interesting seeing how the ordning is working here. I know this is outside the purview of this mod, but like having all of these different components
in my
kind
head
of mashing together.
Right. In my head, the ordning is shattering while folks are in Barovia.
Oh yeah, that does. Yeah.
Like all of the things are coming to a head in terms of Giantkin, while your adventuring party is in Barovia dealing with Strahd's wife.
Yeah.
And then you come back and like, oh no, giants are having a field day. I
dealt with vampires and I haven't seen the sun for months.
Right.
And you guys are now breaking down. Awesome.
Right. Cool.
Really appreciate it.
But yeah, I think there's a lot here. I think like there's no reason. I would say that this is where you want to spend most of your time.
Yes.
In section 3 here.
Well,
because all of these allies,
like 30% of the mod.
Yeah. Because all of these allies, there's like cool stuff that goes on, right? Yep. Like the hidden come up again, but there's no like introduction for them in part 1. Which is just an editing issue, so I just knocked that out because there's no context for what it means.
There's enough other stuff going on.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff going on. You don't need it. The Bronze Shadows section is really cool, like we said. Other than that, you're building.
Then you got the Revenancers. I mean, there's no bad section there. That's why I'm hesitant to give combat, because I would rather donate more of this mod. And like, you know, give the, maybe if someone's wanting to punch a wall, awesome, let him punch a wall. But like, I would almost say at the beginning of this mod, this is going to be very beginning heavy exploration into sneaking into then a combat.
Yeah.
Like, it's like so then blow your resources, whatever the heck you want. Actually, no, you can fight. Technically, I think the Bronze Dragon has a mini fight kind of.
Yeah, you have to like break.
So like, there's 2 kind of big fights.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's actually more than 2 fights. It's like, no, I think it's whichever the way. You can have we're not even there yet, but we'll talk about that. I mean, I think there's enough good info here that I would tell, you know, a person that's like combat heavy guy, be like, dude, we got literally 2 mods, and then you're going to have as much combat as you want. Like, literally every 6 feet.
You're gonna be tired of rolling dice.
You're gonna be inundated with combat.
Yeah.
Like, let me have this.
Right. And that's the time to remind those like fighter barbarian players that like other people are at the table. Other people are a thing, and you should be concerned with the basic well-being and interests of other people.
And hopefully by this time, 15 mods, however many mods later.
Yeah.
You know, they've also established the fact that maybe they can do more with their character instead of hit.
Yeah. You know, sometimes we talk about, like, if you're handed this mod for a convention, like...
hand it back.
But, like, also, like, we say that a lot, but I have never seen, like, mid-season seasonal mods that aren't the current season be handed out at a convention to be like,
I definitely have.
Have you? Okay.
Mm-hmm. But, like, at the same time, if someone handed this to me, I'd be like, yeah, I can run this because I've read this before and I've done a review on it.
Right.
Like, but I would also at the same point in time go like,
are you sure you want me to run this?
Do you really want me to run Szith Morcane Unbound? There are a handful of other tier 2 mods that I would put in place ahead of this, just for ease of DMing. And if you're event organizer, once again, don't know where you're at, you guys might be trying to run through this, and they needed a DM. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know why they're giving you a tier 2, especially this one.
Yeah.
But like, like honestly, I would at this point, like if someone said, "Hey, I've never run this mod," and I was at their table, I'd be like, "Dude, I'll take care of this."
Yeah.
Like, I would go through this and be like, "Hey, I'll run it, not a problem."
Yeah.
Like, just because I
it's a lot
understand
to,
how
yeah, it's a lot to
lot,
expect. Mhm.
and I don't know. I think we've beaten the hell out of this tier, this part 2, part 3.
Yeah.
But like, there's good stuff here.
Yeah, there is. Part 4, Szith Morcane Unbound. The party will need to develop a strategy and put their allies to task. The final battle begins. The party will need to take the fight to Dengor, but he flees, leaving behind 2 salamanders to do his dirty work. Jake, there are a lot of steps to get to this final showdown.
Should I get after it?
What's that?
Should I get after it?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so you have a very cool map that like kind of gives the layout of this area. Once again, we still have not really mentioned anything about Szith Morcane Part 2. Don't know why it's there. So either way, keep going. I'm gonna keep harping on that throughout this mod. So you technically do go through the web system, that big web system. If you got Methanthus or whatever the Copper Dragon's name was, he's gonna go and just f up here. Whatever.
Hopefully, yeah.
And like that's his contribution. Then you get to the ruins at the bottom where there is a like a castle sort of thing being created, or a temple or something, whatever. And you have to cross, and there's like drow slaves, and they give a lot of details of who's here. There's a lot of guys here. Do not start combat here. They will kill you.
Yeah.
End. Like, they will kill you. But that kind of leads to the fact of some stealth checks and the like. I think that with that being said, you got to go through these, read through it, make some, as a DM, you got to take some liberties here.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, hey, what's working, what's not, what will our party like. I did group stealth checks. And then a persuasion check, because there's drow slaves that are like out in the fields, Rotha fields. My party had to deal with a couple of Azers, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And what happened was they caused a stampede. And our running joke in our group is that after the Rotha stampede, there was no evidence of anything left of the enemies, which we've coined as now that the Rotha have a taste for blood.
Yeah.
And
they're now monsters.
Are now no longer they're no longer satiated by anything other than humanoid or any living creature blood.
Other than the blood of their enemies.
The blood of the enemies. And so every Rotha is treated very kindly in our group, regardless of seasons, regardless of characters, for fear of that.
Right.
Moving on from there, you go into the slave dwellings, where you'll meet Rilria, whatever heck her name is. She was a former head of a noble house, so she has some identity, or she has some value here, where she can be utilized as a means to kind of like do her thing. And then there's Corkin, who is the hobgoblin, highest level goblin slave dude. They can be kind of, how I see them is they are utilized as a means to kind of be like, hey guys, we're gonna do it. Like, we're starting a resistance. We know people, and that's when that I kind of keep as a little like breakup in sequence, because you had like a mini fight maybe with the in that Rotha fields, not with the Rotha though.
Hopefully.
And you go to the Dengor's palace, which you find 2 fire giants, some hellhounds, and then 3 stone giant slaves. Dengor, once again, he could already have pieced out, honestly. I think I didn't even have my party encounter him, if I remember correctly, because it's just like, the guy's gonna leave, and like that's a very frustrating thing.
Sure.
Like, maybe you hear him laughing and he runs away. I don't know.
It's a frustrating thing because it happens so free. It's not frustrating if it's like once every 4 seasons, but it happens once or twice every season.
And like, I'm trying to prevent that, because that is a very frustrating feature. So I'd rather him being like, or the catch and note being like, haha, I heard the Rotha stampede. Good one. And I'm like, that's the note that I don't know. But like, so this fight in Dangor's Palace personally is a very interesting fight because you can get your stone giants to help.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough fight. Like, even if it's just 2 fire giants, like 2 fire giants will whoop your butt.
Yep.
And even the adjustment, I think, is for whelpling. I think I'm gonna keep referring to whelplings regardless because fire giant whelplings are a joke. In terms of how they're not in this one apparently. I think.
Yeah,
But
you
fire
replace
giant
one of the
whelplings.
giants with hellhounds instead.
But that to me is not a good fight either. I don't know. I think when the first round of combat happened, someone ran in and there was like fire giant, like the fire giants were too close,
Mm-hmm.
and like he was like spirit guardians, whack, and it was like, oh, spirit guardians is down, like can't save for 50,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So like, just be aware that this fight can, your barbarian fighter might love this, but like this fight is like one of those humbling fights where someone can get their ass kicked real fast. But that's not even everything, which is the worst part. Once you're done with that, you still have his
More fire
personal
giants.
area, his
Yeah.
cave that has 2 helmed horror behemoths and 1 helm horror. Like, that's not good. Like, none of it's good. Like,
Right. There's a lot of combat, right? And part of your job as a DM is to gauge how your party is doing and make adjustments on how much combat they can reasonably handle, right? If the fire giant encounter in Dangor's Palace has depleted a ton of resources,
maybe they're deactivated.
maybe you don't do the hellhound fight. Maybe your party finds a shortcut to the forge. Like, there's a lot of ways to like bypass some of these sections if needed. Also, like, keep in mind that initiative takes 10 minutes. Like, starting and ending battle takes about 10 minutes for new players. So,
Yep.
like, if you're doing a new initiative for Dangor's Palace, and then for the Hellhound Kennel, and then for Dangor's Cave, and then for the Forge of Surtur, that's 40 minutes of, like, admin. Without,
Yep.
like, rolling dice to hit. So I would say that there is too much combat in this section to make this whatever's left in the 4-hour slot you have.
Yeah, that's almost exactly how I feel about that. It's like
Like, this could be a 2 to 3 hour section on its own.
Yeah. I really think the only fights that should happen here are in the Rotha Fields. If you want to, because I thought I ran that, I thought it was hilarious, and I don't think there's any other way that this is gonna ever. I'm gonna always put like a bunch of Rotha in that field, at a precarious spot for everybody that's involved, and almost dangle that carrot. And then this is an hour and a half combat, like I don't think there's 2 ways about that. Like,
yeah, there's a lot.
It's an hour and a half combat with just 2 fire giants. Like, they have a high AC. They have a freaking 18 AC with 162 hit points. Then, like, even if you got your stone giants involved, they don't have their stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they are going, and you have typically at this level, hopefully they're not only using fire, but you have wizards and stuff that are like, I've got fireball, and it's like they're immune.
Right.
So, like, the grandiose features are, like, gone. No con saves are going to be really failed unless your dice are crap. Like, like at this current level, the highest DC that's probably going to be presented to you from a player is 15 or 16. Their con base is plus 10.
Yeah.
So you have a plus 75%. You have a 75% chance of making the saves. And I don't know.
It's a long fight.
It's a long fight,
It
and
just is.
it's a drag of a fight, and like, yeah, it's like, as we've always said, like, almost in tier 1, I don't say exclusively in tier 1, but like tier 1, it's cool to run fights until there's nothing new to run.
Well, once you've
over.
exhausted all the cool stuff about this fight, you should find a way out of the fight.
The problem is there's 162 times 2, if you adjust higher. That's a thing. But
Yeah.
like, that is in and of itself, you can't just skip.
Hmm.
Like, I won't skip this fight
Sure.
because
It's pretty essential. I
it's
mean,
an
like,
essential fight.
you
Like,
could drop their hit points. You could drop their AC. I would
I
probably drop their hit
I
points
I
before
would
their
try their hit
AC.
points. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Like, there are things you can do to make the fight quicker, but it will never be a fast fight.
No,
Like,
this is not a sub-hour fight, in my opinion. Like,
unless everybody in your party's got stuff with dex saves, it's going to be a long fight.
yeah. So I I hesitate to say like cut other fights out, but like I want this fight
Hmm.
and maybe one more, and then you probably will still be right around 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything you should cut in this mod. Nothing you should cut in this mod.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you're
in the prior
you're
sections,
pushing.
everything is cool. I mean, there's not like everything
Like
is
the
valuable.
dragon you should go do.
Hmm.
I think you should go do the stone
Yeah.
giants. You could if like time allowed, do the revenancers. But that's at least an hour right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You need to start section 4 with 2 hours left.
yeah, and that would probably keep
Easily.
you good.
Yeah.
But like, it's gonna be tough.
The longest fight by far in this mod is going to be 2 fire giants and a hellhound with the 3 stone
Yeah.
giants. That's going to take
Yep.
the most time.
Absolutely.
Unless I don't know, I would ignore the helm horror fight. I think like helm horrors can
The
be
spell
interesting,
magic
but
or
like
whatever.
not super interesting. Also, there's a helm horror in the salamander fight, so you get that cool aspect there instead.
If I decide to run it, like
Yeah,
it's this is not a bad mod. I want to reiterate.
it's
Not a bad
mod. It's a lot to
long
squeeze
and
into
tough.
4 hours. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
the issue. Is it's a like most of the time when we're talking about 4 hour mods, we're like, there's no way this is going to take 4 hours.
And like
This
I think
is
we
a
had
6
one
hour
or
mod.
two mods that we actually ran over 2 periods. I think this was
Yeah,
one of them.
this was one of them. Yep.
We ran in a 6 or 7 hour slot because like we don't want to skip anything.
Right.
Um,
Yep. So we did parts 1, 2, and 3 as 1 4-hour session, and then we came back and did Szith Morcane Unbound
for
the
like
next
2
week,
hours.
and it took like 2 hours. Yeah. And I think that's probably a good way to go about it. To be honest, like I would break this up over 2 play sessions.
And if your plan is to do that as a DM, I would say if your plan is to do that, then you could be more. You can give them more liberty to putting a combat in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. But I still think there's a lot of content to get through, even in the first 3 sections. So just like be aware of how long it takes your party to like. If your party is like on the spot when it comes to combat, feel free to add a combat in the first 3 sections. If your party is like notorious for like being on their phone and stuff, like it's gonna be slow. It's gonna be a slow slog. You've got one fight that's probably gonna take an hour and a half before you get to helmed horrors, right? Like,
Yep.
And that could take another hour if you want to do that fight. I would skip the cave fight altogether and move right onto the forge fight instead.
Yep.
I think it's frankly more interesting. I think
Your
like,
players are already going to be at a resource dump from the fire giant fight.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, I guess technically you don't even need to do the fire giant fight, but I don't know why you wouldn't.
I think there's a lot of thematic stuff there that's important with the fire giants.
Yeah.
But that's just I guess a personal opinion in terms of theme.
I think in terms of the coalition and everything, like
Mhm.
keeping the fire giants, be like, you guys can unify and then not kill the fire giants. It's like,
right. I think the Forge of Surtur is interesting, especially like the. So the idea is like they are compelled to defend the forge, these salamanders. I think you can find a way to like break that enchantment as a party member, and all of a sudden it's just a fight against Azers and a Helmdor, and the
Yeah.
salamanders are helping you, right? I think that's the go-to. I would make sure that your party is aware that that is a thing that's on the table. I might like telegraph that by saying like they look addled, they look like they're not in control of their own desires. Whatever you have to say to like let your party know like there's an enchantment here that can be broken, and you can get 2 allies in this fight.
Yep.
Especially when they're already at a resource disadvantage from the fire giants. But that's something you have to like verbalize and telegraph as a DM. Otherwise, your party's not gonna realize that they're not just like evil guys who are in line with a fire giant, right? Other than that, I think like the combat's pretty straightforward. Like there's a lot of it. After breaking the enchantment over them, the enraged salamanders seek out Dengar. Szith Morcane's defenders defeated and the city retaken. The surface folk and their subterranean allies have built a solid ground to take the fight to Meramidra. So there it is, DDAL 315, Szith Morcane Unbound. Thank you so much for listening. Some advice to streamline and run it for your tables. Be a good neighbor, give us that thumbs up, and subscribe. Toll the Dead for notifications. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. And from now until the next time, roll together.